All right. Hey there, everybody. So we got another episode of Empire Interviews. Today, I'm going to be joined by Sam Delaney. We're going to have some awesome conversations about smart contracts, Grabbit, Ikigai, and maybe even Ascent rivals. Who knows? We'll see. But without further ado, let's get into it. Hey there, Sam. How are you doing? Thank you for joining me today. How's your day going, man?
Going great, going great. Thanks for having me. It's fun actually. Getting to hang out again after. Well, I think we met at Rare Evo and had some good times there. So good to see you again.
Absolutely. Dude, good to see you too. Rare Evo was a blast. That was actually my first, well, let's say like my second crypto event, but like the first one that was like that. So
Mm-hmm.
that was really exciting. Um, and I was blown away by all the people that are building cool things and that were there. And so I'm excited. Next year's is supposed to be 4 to 5 times bigger and be way more focused on cross chain.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so, for everybody out there who doesn't specifically know you, isn't familiar, give us a little intro. Tell me about yourself. What do you do in the space and your interests here?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so I'm Sam Delaney. I'm the principal smart contract engineer at Ikigai Technologies. I'm one of the founders at Grabbit. I authored SIP 102, and I'm a smart contract engineer really at the core. But I came into that and into Cardano a couple of years ago after doing more full stack development, and so. Um, I definitely lean kind of dev heavy, but I'm one of those people that likes to have my hand in kind of everything, and I like to do a lot of different things, and so that's what I've been doing. I've done a lot of stuff around price discovery, whether it's the Grabbit protocol, working on price discovery events or bootstrapping events, stuff like that. Um, and also SIP 102 is a royalty standard. So again, more stuff around like the economics of selling assets. Yeah, I guess that's a good enough intro.
Fantastic. No, I love it. Yeah, it was a pleasure meeting all of you guys, honestly, at Rare Evo. We'd exchanged over Discord and over like socials and people that are in this space, you are inevitably segmented or siloed from all the regular people on Twitter because we only exist in a part of Twitter that's called crypto Twitter. And it's
Mhm.
definitely a very different, or CT as some people call it, it's a very different side of the social media world. It's a little bit
Yeah.
more tech heavy, a little bit more sarcasm heavy, and maybe a little bit more verbally creative. But
We have
yeah,
a good time.
we have a good time. That's 100% true. So, Sam, what was your life and what is your experience or expertise before crypto?
Hmm. Yeah, so I got into, I guess, straight out of college, I had two degrees and kind of two interests. I was very much into computer science, also into linguistics. That's so I got a double degree, one in each of those fields, and straight out of that, I went into linguistic software. I worked for a company called SIL International on several different tools straight out of college that are basically used by field linguists when they're going out into the field to gather linguistic information on languages that haven't been studied that much, going to very small communities and doing basically apps that are able to gather data in sometimes less than ideal situations, and uh, then also tools for the linguist to sort through that data efficiently. So definitely really fun, really excited stuff. I could talk about that stuff forever, but it wasn't super connected to blockchain. There's some stuff related to that that is starting to be looked at for using blockchain. in linguistic software, but for the most part unrelated, and certainly in the work that I was doing. But then, yeah, I ended
Where
up
did
coming. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, where did your like passion and like interest into like blockchain and crypto come in? Like,
Mhm.
what was the first time you heard about like Bitcoin or crypto or like blockchain? And then, like, how did that get you here? You know what I mean?
So when I was in college, this would have been probably 2017, 2018. One of my buddies got really into Bitcoin, and he invested a lot into it. And he kept telling me, bro, you have to invest in Bitcoin. You got to invest in Bitcoin. And man, do I wish that I'd listened to him, because that would have been a great time to get into Bitcoin. But um, at that point, it had a nice spike, and then it dropped, and he lost a bunch of money on that drop. And so that was enough to like scare me off of it for a while. And so I was aware of cryptocurrencies from like a distance, but wasn't ever super involved until probably mid 2021, when Michael, who he's the CEO of Wiki Guy, I think you're going to be interviewing him shortly.
No, I will.
Yeah,
Whether he wants it or not. If I have to go to his house and be in his closet waiting for him when he gets home, I'll do it. But
I'll
hopefully, it
show
won't
up at
come to
his.
those extremes.
I'll just call in again, and I'll show up from his house, and I'll force him to do the interview for you.
There we go. There
Um,
we go.
yeah, no, Michael's great. So I've known Michael for a long time. We kind of grew up together, and so we were still hanging out. And he basically hit me up and said, "Hey, I have like a role that I need filled." This was right when smart contracts had been introduced to Cardano. And he said, "I need somebody to come learn smart contracts. We need like a senior smart contract engineer." And at this point, I'd been out of school for like 2 years, right? So he hits me up and says, I could either pay a senior engineer to learn this entirely new technology, and pay him senior engineer amounts of money, or I could hire you, a junior engineer who I know likes learning, and have you come in and learn how to be a senior engineer and learn how to be a smart contract engineer on Cardano at the same time, since it's something that nobody really knows how to do yet. So that's how I got just kind of yanked into Cardano. It took a little longer than that. It took him a couple months to convince me that this was the role for me. But yeah, I really kind of fell into Cardano blind, and on the strength of my nepotism. And so yeah, I got pulled in there, and really like started to see the value of Cardano. And I'm so grateful that Michael pulled me into Cardano specifically, because as I've been, as I started to learn more about the ecosystem as a whole and look at all these other chains, I was like, wow, okay, I started on the best one. And that's been really, really nice. I'm very grateful to him for that. But yeah, that's the story of how I got here.
That's fantastic, and I love that a lot. And it's kind of interesting because I recently was interviewing Phil from Anastasia Labs, and dude, man's a genius.
He is.
Really great conversation. But one of the things that I enjoyed talking about was the hack on Cardano. That he single-handedly stopped, and that was his hero moment in a sense, because I remember that day. I woke up, and I think that basically somebody was doing a DDoS attack on Cardano, and it was like for 3 hours probably. And then it was like 2 hours and 15 minutes or something that it had been going on, and we're all like, oh, this is weird. Cardano is going very slow. This usually doesn't happen, this, that, and the other. And then what happened was that I got into this Twitter space. Of course, it was L having a space about it, and bunches of people were in there talking about this Cardano being slowed up and all this stuff. And then Phil comes up and he's like, "Yeah, so what's going on?" And then we're like, "Well, the whole blockchain is slowed down." And then he's like, "Oh, well, let me check it out." And then like 30 minutes later, he's like, "Yeah, I figured it out. I exploited the exploiter, took all his money, and then published it so that everybody else can also exploit him. So like then everybody was tweeting on that and putting all of the receipts on how they actually like exploited the exploiter. And then so it's funny because it ended up being a very expensive exploit for somebody trying to attack the network. So we talked about that and what that was like. And he was like, yeah, it's crazy. He was like, I audit code all the time. So I was able to audit it, find the exploit, and then I exploited the exploiter. Something that was said by people at that time was that there were like certain characteristics of the exploiter that are true as far as the logic in the EVM side, which is a different kind of like accounts. Like Cardano is an accounts-based model. The other side is different, and the mess up or the like lack of understanding of how the accounts-based model works is actually where that exploit was like existed, right? That's what I heard is where that exploit was. But so that was interesting and that was an exciting time.
Yeah.
So you are a part of Ikigai Technologies, and you all have some of the best reputation in the space for contributions on different kinds of infrastructure level code, as well as some of the stuff you're building. Can you tell me about some of that stuff that you have built out, where their value is, and like what are the things that you're most excited about going forward?
Yeah. Yeah. Boy,
Yeah, big question.
there's a lot to respond to. I mean, the whole thing with Phil was so fun. I was in that space too when he came out and he was like, listen, every dev in here, I want you to go start like pulling, because we have to do this as quickly as possible. Start pulling his min UTXOs out. And so there I was typing away at my keyboard trying to yoink some of that for myself. But yeah, I love Phil. Just what a guy. I remember.
How much you get?
Dude, I was working on it and then I did the math and I was like, hold on. There's a bunch of other people who are doing this and there's only like 500. I don't remember how much it was. It was like 500 ADA was available. And I was like, this isn't even worth my time. So I didn't end up pulling any money out of it. I let the other people who wanted the bragging rights do it. But yeah, it was fun. Anyways, so what was the question?
Yeah. So like what are some of the Ikigai has worked on all kinds of things in this space. What are some of the things you're the most excited about and what were some of the contributions you think are massive?
Yeah. I think we have probably the biggest thing that we've built is the Grabbit protocol. It's one of, if not the most complex protocols on Cardano in Plutarch, which is basically a extremely low level language that it's probably the hardest language on Cardano to write on, but it's also potentially the most performant. And we've done a lot of those optimizations. And so we've taken that's now open source and basically provided that to the community. It's also, as far as I know, the only fully on-chain auctions that are on Cardano. Everything else uses some sort of combination of batchers or just simple off-chain tracking for everything in between. Where with the Grabbit protocol, everything can be run by the users. There's no centralized aspect to it. That includes all of the tracking of all of the different bids. So that's a big one. That's a large chunk of work that we put in.
And that is like an auctioning platform, right? Where you're able to discover, you said like the price discovery mechanism, right? Mm-hmm. So essentially you're able to, the protocol itself determines where that sweet spot is. Mm-hmm. Is that correct? And then between the buyer and the seller,
So there's lots of protocols on Cardano and in DeFi in general for mass price discovery, right? That I talked about how we did the price discovery event and liquidity bootstrapping event. That's what turned into taste test, Sunday swap taste test. we were behind the start of that as well. And Sunday Swap has really run with that, but there's not a lot of examples of granular price discovery, which makes a lot more sense for NFTs, and will become even more important with more real world assets. Something that like I've been talking with a RWA real estate company recently, and that's like that granular price discovery is really important, right? So
well, can I like guess who that is, or should I not? Should I leave it?
You feel free to throw out guesses, but I don't think I'm allowed to tell you yet.
Okay,
So
okay. Then I'll leave it then. I won't throw out any
yeah.
guesses. But I will say that I hope that whatever the answer is, it pumps my platypus cyberpunks. So
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. I'll see what I can do.
yeah, my bags.
So yeah, basically Grabbit is trying to solve the problem of granular price discovery through English auctions, which is the auction that most people are familiar with. They're kind of the eBay style, but that's hard to do on a UTXO chain that has to deal with contention. And so what Grabbit does that's really unique is it uses a full on-chain data structure to track all of the bids in a way that ensures that you can run an auction in a way that is both decentralized and contentionless. And yeah, I've got a whole long white paper about this I'm always happy to dive deeper into it. Or if I'm sure I can't cover all of the stuff that's covered there. So if people are interested in learning more about that, I've got the documentation, got the white paper, got the open source protocol. There's lots to dive into. But that's what Grabbit is at the core. And of course, we built a front end onto it as well, where you can go buy and sell NFTs.
That's fantastic, and I love that. So for somebody that's not in this space, that auction ability, what makes that novel and special, right? You've mentioned RWA platforms and how like real estate potentially that could have, but what real world use case does that solve for?
Yeah, well, so that's where the granular price discovery comes in, right? Is when you're trying to sell a house or a fraction of a house, that house is going to have its own unique value that's different from every other house. And so being able to allow people to determine that price individually rather than as, the whole of like, if you were to use a DEX to try and sell a house, you're going to get the average price that people are selling houses or the latest price that people are selling houses. And that's not going to be relevant, right? So you need that granular price discovery. And yeah.
I was going to say, so if I have a house in Kentucky, right, I shouldn't be trying to well, it might benefit me if I'm trying to sell that house from Kentucky on a market that's based on the medium or the lowest price in a market like New York, right? So this basically solves that problem that if I have my house in Manhattan and I'm trying to sell it internationally, I'm not going to be limited to the lowest common price of houses. They can actually determine what the value of my penthouse in Manhattan is worth.
Yeah, you're still making use of the market to determine the value of your asset, but you're doing it for your specific individual asset instead of for an entire asset class.
Gotcha. So interesting. So basically, in this kind of in that kind of a housing market, there's not necessarily a floor price, but each one is determined case by case. So this actually creates a real market as opposed to a market that's not based on variables, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I would say they're both real markets in that sense, but this one is a more relevant market to a lot of different use cases, not just real estate, but selling a car, same kind of thing, and a lot of real world assets kind of fall under that category where the value is going to be deterministic.
That's fantastic.
Individually determined.
That's awesome. Okay, so love it. Grabbit, super awesome, super cool. in this space, like in Cardano, and I'm not sure how much or if you all have seen or experienced a lot of building on Bitcoin layer twos, because one of the things that I know is that on the Bitcoin side, a lot of times there's poaching of Cardano devs, because being able to dev the UTXO model is very similar once you go to the Bitcoin side. What are the projects or the people building projects in the UTXO realm or on Cardano or on Bitcoin that you think are the most interesting and have kind of like the most interesting use cases or builds that you're excited about?
Wow, great question. I think number one has to be all of the ZK stuff that's being done. I'm sure Phil talked about this. Phil loves to talk about how great the UTXO model is for ZK. Yeah, like Midgard.
Yeah, he talked about Midgard
Yeah.
a bit, and that's a framework that everybody's going to be able to use in their own their own way that they want.
Absolutely.
So that's exciting.
It's a layer 2 framework, and that's based on a system for doing fraud proofs, which is basically I believe it's an optimistic rollup. Hopefully, I'm right about that. There's also stuff like ZK rollups. I know ZK Fold is talking about, they've got a proposal out for Fund 13 to do ZK rollups, and that is like the fact that the UTXO model done on Cardano is deterministic at a transaction level is so important for limiting the variables that go into a ZK protocol. And so that is huge for scaling and huge for data privacy and so many different ways that you can use ZK. And so I think really like that's what gets me most excited. Is I'm someone who loves to think about not like what's happening next month or what's happening next year, but what's happening in a decade. And that those sorts of technologies are going to be just like so mind-blowingly useful in a decade, where it's really, we're really building for the future. And I think that's yeah, that's the one that gets me really excited right now. Yeah.
So in that, for somebody that's not in this space, what do you see as some of the most exciting use cases for ZK rollups, ZK Fold, the ZK technology? These are some of the things that Midnight allegedly will have all of these capabilities rolled up into. And I believe that maybe not Midnight, but I know that Bitcoin OS is also an exciting thing that is using the Midgard framework. But what things do you see in the world that are exciting and enhanced real world use cases of ZK?
Yeah, I mean, you can do basically anything in a more efficient manner. It's kind of saying everything, which is a little bit of a cop out, I feel like, but there's very few protocols on Cardano that aren't going to benefit from ZK scaling. And so that's a huge deal of just like in every transaction, it's going to be smaller. You're going to be paying less of a fee. It's going to be taking less of the chain up.
Will it make things faster?
Yeah, I mean, it will allow for more throughput, which is really the best way to measure it, right? That's speed plus volume. And so it will definitely limit the number of slowdowns that we see and reduce the number of slowdowns that we see, at least for the amount of data getting transferred. I expect with ZK to see more volume increases because the chain gets better, right? So yes, it will make things faster, but it'll also bring more people, which adds more congestion.
Both things are good.
Yeah.
Both things are good. That's fantastic. So like for me personally, some of my background is I come from the medical tech world, in sales, but I was close to the engineering side. I was close to some of the clinical trial side of how those things function. And for me, I think the most interesting use case of ZK as well as things like Midnight, where you have the privacy layer and the public layer, is being able to have medical data stored on chain while preserving an individual's privacy, but also having queryable data that can be useful for looking at different data sets. That is something that is really exciting to me in general, because one of the things, and I go into this tangent a little bit often, so maybe I need to cut it out, but I'm gonna give this tangent. But with like cancer research, a lot of times for information to be viable, you have like the person is treated, then 10 years passes, and then there's like a period of 10 years after that then that is now viable data, right? There's not like they know for sure that data is true. There's no inconsistencies, but that inherently adds kind of like a 20-year lag in like what is current information, right? And so for me, having that kind of information searchable on the blockchain or database queryable, even if you're having the person's privacy, that means that we have real-time data of medical information that can help adjust how we treat people in the country and just in general on a case-by-case basis. You can look at one person and be like, people in Alabama have higher cholesterol levels, right, because of X, Y, Z. And these are the variables in these demographics. And that's just, I think, a powerful tool.
Yeah, absolutely. I think kind of in a similar vein to that, it also can power up the medical systems in a country. In fact, a couple of years ago, we had a government approach us, an African government approach us about building a medical system.
And that's funny. I had that conversation, and I think that's a connection that I need to revisit together and on behalf of the common cause.
Right. Yeah. It'd be an incredible thing to do. And like, there's so much time wasted in like transferring documents, even still, and making sure that everything follows the standards, where you could pretty easily with ZK build an app that stores all of a user's information online, on chain, and then they show up to a doctor's appointment, and they can immediately, the doctor just instantly has access to that information in a way that is HIPAA compliant and completely secure. And that's a huge deal too. And that's going to make so many people's lives just a little bit easier, and at the end of the day, that's a huge increase in quality of life.
See, that's actually what I want to build. The problem is I consulted a couple people about like very in depth of what I was trying to do. They're like, yeah, man, of course we can build it. We just need like $50 million and that'll like take care of the dev. Because the thing is that what they told me is if I can get $5 million, then that's cool, because then I can get VCs to match five. I could get 5 VCs to match, and then I'm closer to the target. But I'm short a few million there, so
yeah. I don't blame you.
So one of my favorite questions to ask people that dev is, if you could build anything or solve for any one problem, right? Unlimited budget, blank check. What are you building?
Wow.
You don't have to give me all the nitty gritty, right? So that nobody just takes all of it. But most of the time when you give people good ideas, nobody has they don't have the chutzpah or the you know what I mean? They don't have it to actually steal it. So,
yeah, no, that's a good question. I'm one of those people, I think, where my goals are generally pretty broad. Like when I talk about like the general impact that I want to have in the ecosystem, in the world, it's generally about empowering people. And so, I immediately jumped in my mind to things like Socius or things like World Mobile, where they're like providing
tell me about
services.
Socius. I don't know that one. I know World Mobile.
Yeah, Socius is Socius.io. It's by Sarah Yoon. He's a great member of the Cardano community, really active in the Japanese Cardano community, especially. And they do. Let me make sure I'm getting this right. What they do basically is they connect job seekers with companies or nonprofits that are that match that job seeker's mission in life, right? And so Socius basically,
kind of like finding your ikigai, right?
Yeah,
They line you up
exactly.
yeah.
Right. And so it's a way of getting people into jobs that are actually going to impact the world. And I think that's a really exciting thing for me, is like I don't feel the need to like be that person that's directly impacting, but if I can help a bunch of people get that way, that's really cool to me. And so yeah, things like providing infrastructure to third world communities, I think is something that I'm really passionate about and I would love to build in the future. And that's something that doesn't necessarily need to involve blockchain, but it absolutely could, right? World Mobile has done a great kind of case study of how you can integrate in internet and blockchain together, and stuff along that vein. That's where I would go. But you know, for me, that decision would come down to when I get that money. You know, what's the next need? What's the thing that isn't getting filled right now? That's what I would build.
100%. I think that's a really good way of looking at it in general. And that's kind of how I feel. Like, I'm not technical. Like, I can't, sit behind a computer and then like make something cool happen. But I can be like, hey, this is my idea. And then somebody else can be like, oh, okay. And then I can iterate that. That's the only gift that I feel like I might have. But at the same time, I think impact is the biggest, most important thing in a sense, because we only live. I always say we only live this long, and we don't know how long or short that actually is. And so during this time, we have to do the most. We have to do the most unimaginable, biggest thing possible, because it's our only chance. We only get one.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah, I've started reading and watching more science fiction because I'm realizing the world is getting to a place where a lot of the things that have been imagined in science fiction are starting to come true, right? And I'm starting to read and watch the science fiction as a way of like thinking on a bigger scale. Like what is the world going to look like in 20, 25 years? Some of those great ideas, they appear in these science fiction novels. And that's like kind of a brainstorming thing for me of like, okay, what are the things that I could help build?
Well,
yeah.
Have you read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
Of course.
It's
Dude.
my absolute hands down favorite. Actually, okay, so I have tattooed on my rib right here, I believe it's on this side, God's last message to all creation in Times New Roman font. Yeah, it's
Nice.
sorry for the inconvenience, period. But anyways, it's one of my favorite books I've ever read before in my life. And I think it's amazing that the Babelfish was written in that book. And then that's where the first internet translation software that ever came out, Babelfish, the idea came from. And there's so many aspects of that book that I think ring true today. I think that their depiction of humans on Earth is hilarious. Is basically like they talk about this planet that's like pretty like insignificant, where the inhabitants only recently came down from the trees, and before they were obsessed with bananas, and now they're obsessed with pushing little green pieces of paper around. And you know what I mean? Like the most advanced thing that they have is like digital watches, basically, and phones, but digital watches, like they still think they're pretty cool. It's like, it is a funny way to look at things.
Yeah, you had me reaching around because I put it away right before this, but I had a towel next to my desk, and I was like, I keep that on me,
That's
you gotta.
so funny. So many good things about that. I think that the last presidential election and the previous one, there's some jokes in there as about that as well. One of my favorite ones is the main character is reading about a planet that's run by lizard people, but it's a democracy, and he just doesn't understand. He's like, how is it run by lizard people? The majority of the people on the planet are humans, but then the minority is lizard people, but the lizard people run the planet. How's that possible if it's a democracy? And his friend's like, I don't know. His alien friend's like, I don't know. I don't understand what you're talking about. He's like, well, like, how is it that it's a democracy and they hate lizard people, but lizard people run the country? He's like, well, obviously they vote for the lizard people because they're afraid that if they don't, the wrong lizard person's going to get in. And it's kind of like, he's like, well, why don't they just not vote for a lizard person? And he's like, honestly, they've never thought of that. And I feel like that's the situation we find ourselves in.
I relate to
kind
that.
of like, yeah, perpetually. And so love science fiction, love all that. One of the questions that I ask everybody that I really enjoy asking is if somebody else is paying the tab and you're able to go anywhere in the world to eat, what are you eating? Paint me a vivid picture with your words. And like, where did you go to eat that thing? Or those things. You can go like, one place for something and one place for another thing. Charles is taking you on his Black Hawk.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. That's a very good question. I feel like getting in a real Disney mood, going to Paris and eating some ratatouille in a real nice restaurant, I love a good ratatouille. That's one of those dishes that, like, I saw that movie, I learned how to make it, and now I make it for special occasions, and it's simply too good. It's every bit as good as it looks in the movie.
That's interesting because so mine is carbonara. Like I was in Italy. I have some family there, and that was the thing that I had to learn how to make like there. So I do it with raw eggs and make the sauce, and you have to like stir it while it's hot and the whole 9 yards. Love it. But that's Paris is beautiful. That was an excellent choice right there. And then when you are doom scrolling to find something to watch, either a movie or a show, what typically what are the criteria, or what are the things that draw you in to pick something? Like, what do you look for when you choose it? So not necessarily what is your favorite movie, but like what kinds of movies are the ones that you typically go to?
So I very rarely watch movies, TV shows. It's a constant source of frustration to my friends that I never know what they're referring to when they're talking about movies. I do spend too much time on YouTube. And really the way that works is every 2 weeks or so, I'll get a new little obsession, and I'll start, that'll be the thing that catches my eye, and I'll do that. So, it varies, every 3 months or so, I go through an architecture phase where I'm just like looking at all of these Frank Lloyd Wright architectures and all the coolest stuff out there. I very frequently find myself deep into geopolitical explanations, or economics, stuff like that. And I try to keep it semi-relevant to to life. But sometimes I have a bunch of friends who have just gotten into Warhammer, and so I'm in the process of cutting short a bit of a Warhammer phase because I have to understand what they're talking about. So anyways, it varies wildly.
You missed me on that one. So what is Warhammer? Tell me this.
Okay. So Warhammer 40K is a tabletop role-playing game.
Okay,
if you're familiar with D&D,
yeah,
it's kind of like D&D, but if you take out all of the like role-playing and talking, and it's just the combat, and every person's a dungeon master, so they all have their own little army that they're controlling.
Interesting.
That's as best as I can understand it with my week-long binge of what's happening in Warhammer. But yeah, that's one of those where like it's super nerdy, and I don't know how good I feel about the fact that I just spent a bunch of time learning about this.
No, I feel you. I understand 100%. I would say on the YouTube side, the thing that like probably zaps the most of my time is like, and I hate it because I cannot do this with my family or most of the time around other people that are close to me, but it is the Lex Friedman stuff. Because I love me a Lex Friedman 3, 4, 5 hour interview. The ones that I gravitate towards that I really like are about like anything that has to do with potential extraterrestrial origin, or like literally like the way that biologically and chemically we evolved from nothing, and why they think that basically some kind of extra like I can't even think about it, but something from like an intergalactic object basically like planted the biological seeds that eventually created our whole existence. And so they talk about how the extraterrestrial, or no, the exotic material that traveled probably inside of a meteoroid from outside of our solar system into our solar system. So kind of like seeding our planet. And so it's interesting because they say, you know, if you are an intelligent society, how else could you ensure that your species continues on besides doing something like this, like seeding, you know, the universe with like on these planets that are livable. So those, I get lost in those for too long.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I love Lex too. Great. Yeah. I love listening to his AI stuff because he really knows what he's talking about.
AI stuff is crazy. That's one of the things that I actually would like your opinion on, and that I'm excited about. I heard Charles talk about how there's not really a connection between like blockchain and AI that makes sense right now. A lot of it is theoretical, but in my mind, I kind of see these cloud systems like what Igon is building out with AI on them that are like token gated. So like every person has their own token, and they have their particular AI. So if mine is Susan, every time that I connect to that AI because of my token, I'll be talking to Susan, where somebody else might have Jeremy, and Jeremy would be their like personality built around their expertise. And that's kind of how I see it. Are you excited about AI and blockchain, and how do you see it working here?
Yeah. I definitely see what Charles is saying. I think AI and blockchain kind of feel like cousins. Like we're kind of growing up together. And at the same time, there's not a super clear bridge where it's like, oh, AI gets way better because of blockchain, or blockchain gets way better because of AI. And that's that's something that I'm sure there will be that bridge at some point. Somebody will figure out like, oh, this use case completely blows everything out of the water. One thing that I could see it one way I could see it happening, and something that's already, I think, being explored a little bit is the idea of using blockchain as a way of providing incentive for data mining for these AI agents, right? Because these AI models are built on just tons and tons and tons of data. And that's mostly our data for a lot of things, right? But we're not getting paid for that. And so what I would love to see is I would love to see a blockchain-based solution where your data is gated from these AI agents. And in order to access that data, they have to pay you a small fee. Something like that, I think, would be great. And plus as a just massive ledger, which is what a blockchain is, there's a lot of data there, and there's a lot inherently there. And as blockchain continues to grow, more and more and more of the financial information that is available is going to be held on one of these blockchains. And so I think they'll naturally grow together. And I'm not a big fan of trying to force things, but I think that idea of like having that data access kind of layer, I think has a lot of potential, and I'd love to see somebody start exploring that at the very least.
That's fantastic. All right, so then here's my last question, and I'll let you go. But I'm going to be interviewing Igon Nav on Monday. So, do you have any questions or anything for them that you think I should ask?
Interesting. I love hearing from respected builders in the space who they respect in the space.
Yeah.
And so I'd be interested to hear, like, who have they really seen growing the space? Who do they think is indispensable? Who is, who are the people who have helped them along the way? I know that's maybe not as technical a question as you were hoping.
No, that's a good one.
But
That's a good one. And I usually ask that question. So will you answer that question for me as far as your perspective on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of really, really talented people in the space. That's one of the things that kind of blew me away when I first came to Cardano, is I just kept meeting more and more people that felt smarter than 99% of people that I've ever met, Yeah. A lot of people making me feel dumb. And so, but I think what I really respect are the people who not only have that level of intelligence and the drive to execute on it, but also have a very clear purpose or ethical drive to them. I think Phil is a great example of that. I really enjoyed getting to work with him. Pi from Sunday Swap, another great example.
He's somebody I want on here for sure.
Yeah, Pi Landingham is awesome. So, tons of respect for him. George Florovsky, he's working on Hydrozoa with Anastasia Labs. He worked with us on the Grabbit protocol. Incredible guy. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I kind of want to leave it at those three, because I know that there's a lot more that I can go to. But those are the first three, and if I keep naming more, I'm gonna get myself in trouble. So
you're good.
Yeah, no, I love all three of those guys and their contributions to the space. Respect them in a lot of different ways.
Fantastic. All right, so we're gonna wrap this up. Give us your final thoughts and things you want to share with people, and tell them where they can find all the information on Ikigai, Grabbit, and different stuff like that. So shout out all your things.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, definitely check out Grabbit at grabbit.market. We're on Twitter at GrabbitNFT. Check out Ikigai Technologies. We're at Ikigai Tech. We've got a bunch of catalyst proposals for Fund 13. So please do check those out. Give them some claps. That'd be great. Also, we didn't really get a chance to talk about this. I'm sure you'll talk about this a lot with Michael, but Ascent Rivals is our game. It's basically pod racing with guns. It's really, really fun, very much esports based. We have a tournament running right now.
I was going to say, I've decided that I'm specifically never going to talk about Ascent Rivals until I get Michael here.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll close my mouth. No.
No. You're good.
Yeah. So go check out with us, or go check out Ascent as well. Come play with us. It's an open alpha on Steam. You can just hop in, play. We're already running a Shelby sponsored Grand Prix. That's, I think, 2 weeks into the qualifiers. And so you've got another 6 weeks of qualifiers if you want to get good and get competing. And there's another tournament, the Cardano Clash Season 2 is coming out soon. So lots of opportunities to get in and immediately start competing. So yeah, I think those are the big ones. Yeah,
love it.
That's it. Shout out also to the John Carter, great guy. Thanks so much for having me on. Much love, and always fun talking with you.
I'll have to have you back again soon. And thank you so much. And make sure you stick around afterwards. I got some stuff that I want to talk to you about. But thank you for joining me. I appreciate you coming. Kind of short notice, sort of, but we've rocked it out, and so this is going to be a great one. Thank you all for joining us. Make sure you share, make sure you follow Sam, Ikigai, Ascent Rivals, GrabbitNFT, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.
Awesome. See you.